Welcome. Today we're going to do a brief video on box and whisker plots. Now if we took a survey of 5,000 men about their shoe size, you might get a box and whisker plot that looks like this. Now in a box and whisker plot, the far end we refer to as the lower extreme, and that's on the left end, and the far upper end we call the upper extreme. Then you have the box part. Those are the whiskers going out from the box to the lowest and the highest point of the data. Now, the middle number is where this bar is inside the box, and that is the median. In this case, that median is at 9. So I would guess that the median shoe size is maybe 9 or 9.5. Then you have something called the lower quartile, which is over the 7 in this case. It's also referred to as the first quartile. Lower or first quartile. And then the other end of the box is called the third quartile or upper quartile. And no matter what you refer to it as, either first quartile, third quartile, lower quartile, upper quartile, they're the ends of the box. From the beginning to here, that whisker is 25% of the data, of all the data that's here. The bottom part of the box is 25%. The upper part of the box is 25%. And this upper whisker is 25%. I didn't put the percents in there, it just doesn't fit. So they're all 25% of the data, each section. So if I were to say, what percent of the data is from 7 to 22? And you would say, well, that's 25, 25, and 25, that's a total of 75% of the data. If I said the inner quartile range, that's the middle 50%. So if you hear that phrase, inner quartile range, that means the middle 50%. Inner or inter quartile range, middle 50%. So in this case, from 7 to 12, or you may even subtract and say that's a 5 size range from 12 minus 7. All right, so another thing I could ask is, I could say, all right, between which two numbers is the middle 50%? And you'd say between 7 and 12. If I said, between which two numbers is the bottom 75%, bottom 75, 25, 25, 25. Bottom 75 is between 4 and 12. So besides knowing those percentages, and that's a very limited amount of data there, the way that it's drawn, like this quarter of the data is really spread out. Now that could mean several things, but it means that the actual values are kind of spread out here. Whereas this part of the data, between 7 and 9 sizes, 7, 8, 9, that's a very tight, but it's still 25% of the data. Long line doesn't matter. This is also equal amount of the data as this. Okay? So that small spot just means that data is squished into a small area. There's a lot of values, 7, 8, and 9, and fewer spaced out values between 12 and 22. It's not less data, it's just there are fewer of the same over and over again, typically. Not always, but typically. All right, so let's take a look at this information. If I start with this data, and I said these were quiz grades, and you needed to make a box and whisker plot. Now, I'm not asking you to make one, I'm just asking you to read them tonight. But if you were ever asked to make a box and whisker plot, the first thing you need to do is line up this data in numeric order. So I have done that here. There's 130, 140, 450s, 360s, 470s, there's 9 80s, and 2 90s. So if that's the actual data in order, the first thing I'm going to pick out of that data is I'm going to pick out the smallest and largest values. So I'm going to say somewhat spaced out evenly. If the smallest value is 30 and the biggest value is 90, I think I've done this right, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, yeah, I did, 90. So the smallest value, now as I said before, one way is to put the line on the end, the other way is to put a dot on the end above the smallest and above the largest value. It doesn't matter how big the dot is. I should have made them about the same size. There we go. All right, so the middle number, the median middle number. There are 24 pieces of data here. I'm going to go 12 from either end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So halfway between 70 and 70 is 70. So I put a vertical line over 70. That's the middle of my box. Well, I say middle. That is the line inside the box. It's not always in the middle. The next thing I need to find is I need to find the halfway point of the lower half of the data. That's the first quartile. Think quartile as quarters. All right, so there are 12 pieces of data. If there was an exact middle of the data, an actual number that was in the middle, you would not include that in the bottom or top half. You would have to ignore that and use every number below it for the bottom half and every number above it for the top half. But because it's in between two numbers, we use the numbers between the, that 70 that way and this 70 this way. 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So halfway between 50 and 60, 50 plus 60 divided by 2, 55. So right there is 55. I always like to label it so it's very obvious. And I put my vertical line. Finally, I do the same thing for the upper half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Halfway between 80 and 80 is 80. So I put a vertical line over 80. I box this in, and then I'm going to make the whiskers from the center of the box out to either the line or the dot, whichever way you did it. And there is your box and whisker plot. Now, often I would ask students, is this an example of a good test or quiz? What do you think? Well, there's lots of ways you could respond. You could say, well, 25% got below a 55. That's a lot of people that got, if this is 24 people, that's at least 6 people got a 55 or below. Not a very good result. In fact, 50 people got a 70 or below. That's not as damning as the 25% getting 55 or below. So that's not a great result. Now there's lots of reasons that that could happen. Maybe it wasn't, there was some bad questions that were confusing on it, that weren't worded well. Or maybe the teacher had a bad day and just didn't do too great at expressing how to do something. There is the possibility that the students just were not having it that day and just weren't trying. And there's always the possibility that it was a difficult topic and they just had a hard time on that particular quiz. So there's lots of reasons behind it, but for the data itself, knowing that more than 25% or more failed the test, that's not great. All right, we did get a portion of the data where 25% was between 70 and 80 and 25% was between 80 and 90. That's good, but the other 50% is not so hot. All right, so that is the basic information for a box of Whisker Plots. See what you can do with it, and good luck. Have a great day.